The Super Smash Bros. Series is known for its large amount of content in the form of its characters, stages, music, and so on. One aspect of the series that is often overlooked though are the items. That's because a lot of players, including myself, prefer to play with them off, but that's not to say that they aren't a good addition to the game. In Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, there are just over 80 items that come from the several franchises represented in the game. With all of them turned on, they can cause a match to quickly become chaotic, as many of these items are quite powerful. However, not every item is as powerful or as fun to use as one another, so today I thought it would be fun to rank every item in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate from the worst to the best. Now, how am I going to be ranking each of these? Well, I mainly just want to look at how fun the item is to use. That means that generally stronger items will be higher, but that won't always be the case, as some weak items can be quite fun, whereas some strong ones can feel quite lame to use. Hopefully that isn't confusing. I should mention that this list of items comes from this screen right here. Items exclusive to characters like Rob's Gyro won't be included. Also, most of my experience with these items come from my speedruns of Ultimate's classic mode, so don't be surprised if that affects my opinion a bit. But with all that said, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right into our worst item. I hate this stupid mushroom. Okay, number 82, the Ramblin' Mushroom or whatever. This thing sucks. Basically, when it spawns, it'll just walk around the stage. If you accidentally attack it, it'll put a mushroom on your head, which may not seem bad, but it actually reverses your controls. Not only is this thing headache-inducing, but people can also pick up this item and make the mushroom spawn in your head that way. On top of that, remember how I said most of my item time comes from my classic mode speedruns? Well, not only is this next to useless on computers, I mean, they're not just gonna start slipping around all over the place, but the item is effective on me because I do slip around with it on my head. This is the absolute worst item to see spawn during a classic mode run, and that has made me irrationally angry just seeing it. I'm sure most of you are just gonna comment skill issue, and you're right. But this is my list, and I really just don't like this thing. But alright, from here on the list is probably going to be a bit more of what you would expect. 81, the Healing Field, and while we're at it, 80, the Healing Sprout. These are Smash original items and will heal any player that is either in the field or has the sprout attached. While I don't have any problems with healing items, I mean we'll see quite a few later, these have one crucial issue, the fact that it heals everyone. Sure, the person who picked it up can place the item in a more advantageous spot for them, but considering the Healing Field stays around for so long, it's not unreasonable to believe someone could just run up to it during its duration. Additionally, since these will be spawning in item matches, standing in one spot is a really bad idea since you lose the chance to get items from elsewhere on the stage. So while these are definitely much less frustrating than that mushroom monstrosity, these are probably much more useless. 79, the Smoke Ball. Have you ever seen a Piranha Plant main think they're so clever by using their smoke cloud to conceal themselves doing down B? Well, this item is basically that gimmick, but for any character. Its usefulness varies based on what character has it equipped, but let's be real, this isn't really that helpful at all. In the chaos of an items match, this just adds a slight bit more noise and just isn't that exciting, so I think most people will agree it belongs pretty low. 78, the Blast Box. This one may be a bit controversial, but I just don't really like using this thing. It basically acts as an explosive that'll explode when attacked. While that may sound fine, it's way more durable than it should be, meaning it takes forever to explode. Since you can't really throw it at anyone either, everyone can just step back. Yeah, it explodes faster when exposed to fire, but that's far too little to save this. 77, the Motion Sensor Bomb. This will stick to any surface, and if anyone touches it, it explodes. Well, certainly the most usable item we talked about so far, this has a similar flaw that the Healing Field did, the fact that it kills anyone. Now obviously the one who placed it will have the advantage of knowing where they did, but if anyone is paying attention, so will they. I will say this does have a slight niche use in the training mode, where you can place it on the ledge to practice snapping to it instead of going above, but since this video is talking about items in matches, yeah, this is pretty underwhelming. 76, the Unira. This comes from Clu Clu Land, and when thrown, will stick to a surface and extend its spikes. While it does have a few niche uses, it's generally pretty easy to avoid since it's small. 75, the Back Shield. This comes from the Kid Icarus series and puts a shield on your back. While this is definitely the most useful item we've seen so far, it's also just not very exciting. Remember, this video is about how fun an item is, and this being purely defensive doesn't make me super excited to see it. I'm sure people will disagree, but I'm just personally kind of meh on this item. Also coming from Kid Icarus, we have 74, the Laser Eye. This will consistently shoot out small energy balls from its eye. This is really just a minor annoyance, but it's made even more pathetic by the fact that it can actually be turned around by attack, so opponents could just stand on the other side that isn't attacking. 73, the Black Hole. This will pull all opponents and items nearby toward the center of it. This can leave opponents pretty vulnerable to attacks, but there are two major downsides here. One, people are still active while stuck in the black hole, so they can just dodge. Secondly, since this will also pull in items as well, the person stuck can basically get free access to a very powerful item. The black hole is still somewhat neat, it's just got a lot of flaws holding it back. 72, the Banana. This is our first item that can actually spawn even with items turned off. Of course, that's with Diddy Kong's down special, so this is an item everyone is pretty familiar with. It will cause anyone who walks over it to comedically trip. While this is certainly a powerful tool in the competitive scene, in terms of items, this is actually on the weaker end. Getting a chance to attack your opponent can be helpful near the end of a stock, sure, but the other items are just simply a lot more exciting. 71, the Freezy. Coming from Mario Bros, this will encase anyone in a block of ice that comes in contact with it. It's basically just another stun for a free attack item, but I like this a bit better than the banana because the ice effect is much rarer than the trip effect. 70, the Pow Block. Also coming from the Mario series, this can be used 3 times and will damage anyone that's on the ground when activated. While the multiple uses are nice, I feel like it's just a bit too easy to avoid. I don't think they should change the item at all, considering this is basically a one-to-one recreation of how a Pow Block works, but as an item in Smash, it's only really okay. 69, the Sandbag. This is one of the most famous Smash original items, as he's the poor thing that gets beat up in the home run contest. While him being in that mode is obviously really cool, I'm not considering it for the list. In the normal Smash mode, you basically just beat it up to get items, which is kind of hard to do in the chaos of an items match. The items it drops can be pretty strong though, so I did decide to bring it above the last few entries. Speaking of item containers, 68, the Container. Now this is technically a group of items consisting of the crate, rolling crate, barrel, capsule, party ball, and grass. Now why these were all combined into one I have no clue, since some can act quite differently, so you know what, let's really quickly do a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's all containers ranked. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. 6, the crate, it's very basic. 5, the barrel, it's basic but round. 4, the grass, I like how it's a reference to Super Mario Bros. 2. 3, the capsule, it can sometimes be an explosive which is funny. 2, the rolling crate, it saved my speedrun one time and got me a world record. It's also fun to stand on top of. And finally, 1, the party ball. The reason it's my favorite is because it can sometimes summon like 5 bombs, which is very chaotic. Hopefully that satisfies all you container fans. 67, the rocket belt. This lets you fly pretty much forever, which is nice for recovering, but it's really not that exciting of an item. The rocket belt also takes away your character's double jump, which makes doing aerial combos with it super annoying. It's definitely more of a help than a hindrance, but having a downside isn't really something I'm looking for in a good item. 66, the bumper. Okay, realistically, this should have been a lot lower, but I do have a lot of fun using this. Basically, anyone who touches it will be bounced away. It's not really strong and it affects everyone, which should mean it's bad, but I don't know, I just kind of have fun comboing off it. 65, the fire flower. This is probably the most okay item in the game. It just spits out fire in front of the player at a constant rate. It does a decent amount of damage, but isn't anything crazy. I'd probably like it less, but come on, I'm the Mario guy and it's a Mario item, I kind of have to like it. 64, the fairy bottle. This will heal the player of 100%. Sounds pretty good, right? Like the Zelda series, this won't activate until after you've already taken the damage. So at any point before then, you kind of just have to hold on to it, which is a bit of a hassle. Plus, several characters can kill well before 100, especially with items on, so having to wait till that point to heal can be a bit rough. It's still good if you get to that point though, so I think it still works. 63, the Deku Nut. This also comes from the Zelda series, and I was honestly going to put it lower on the list at first. This can be used to stun opponents like a shield break, though only works if they're grounded. It does also have a timer for some reason, so if you don't get rid of it quickly, it'll explode in your hands. I don't really feel like that was necessary, so it brings down the item a bit, but the stun use is pretty helpful. 62, the Ray Gun. This is also just a pretty okay item. It deals a small amount of damage, but the lasers are pretty quick to shoot. It's not the most exciting item ever, but it's certainly worth picking up if there's nothing else. 61, the Boomerang. This comes from the Mario series, and is another pretty simple projectile. I'd say the boomerang is better for 2 reasons. 1, Mario, and 2, it can be hard to dodge because of how wildly it flies. Having a match with just boomerangs on is also some pretty chaotic fun. Alright, let's do our 3 remaining healing items really quick. 60, the food. 59, the maximum tomato. It's actually the maxim tomato. Shut up! And 58, the heart container. These 3 just heal anyone who picks it up, and while yes, that is of course very helpful, it's not very exciting or fun, which is the main thing this video is based on. It can cause some fun scrambles to pick up though, so I'd say it's worth placing them around here on the list. 57, the soccer ball. This is one of the most unique items in Smash, as it's actually not one you pick up. Rather, you attack it and it'll go flying towards your opponents. The no picking it up thing can be a bit hard to work with, but man does it feel satisfying to actually hit someone with. If it was just a bit easier to use, it'd likely be a bit higher, but this is still pretty solid. 56, the Killing Edge. Somehow being our one and only item from Fire Emblem, this is pretty much the most basic battering item in the game. It does decent damage and is decently quick, but it's really nothing special. The double damage sound effect is pretty great though, so I will give it that. 55, the Star Rod. This item comes from the Kirby series, and I've honestly never really been the biggest fan of it. Sure, it can shoot out a star, automatically making it more interesting than our last item, but something about this just makes me not like it as much as the future battering choices. It's still iconic enough to be an item, and I am glad it's here, but maybe it could just use a bit of a damage buff in the future. 54, the Superstar. Sticking with the star theme, we have one of the Mario series' most iconic power-ups. escapes. This makes anyone who picks it up completely invincible. Now at first this sounds really good, right? Well it is, but whenever it's in play, it just devolves the match into running away until it runs out, so it's honestly kind of boring. If this also gave the person who picked it up a speed boost similar to Acceleratl on Hero, then this would be a much higher placing item. 53, the drill. If you hit your opponent just right, it'll carry them off the screen completely. It's a bit tricky to do that though, but luckily the handle for the drill also acts as a pretty strong throwing item as well. From this point on, the flaws in these items are definitely getting to be much smaller. 52, the Rage Blaster. This is basically Lucario, if you turn him into a gun. As your damage goes up, the damage you deal with the gun will also go up. That does make it kind of lame to use early into a stock, but man is it fun to use when it starts getting more powerful. 51, the Beehive, and 50, the Cuckoo. These will both swarm whoever gets hit by them, which will deal constant damage and can open them up for attacks. While far from the craziest items, they can still be quite fun to mess around with. I'll put the Cuckoos from Zelda higher as they're a bit more iconic than the Animal Crossing Beehive, but both are still fun to use. 49, the Curry. So this basically does the exact same thing as the Fire Flower from earlier, but there's one major catch. Instead of acting as an item you pick up, this is actually a food you eat. This leaves the fire in front of you and allows you to do attacks while it's active. Again, it's not the craziest or most powerful item, but it can definitely set up for some pretty deadly attacks. Also, I didn't know this before getting footage, but look at Pac-Man's eyebrows after he eats a curry. It's just gross. 48, the Super Leaf. This gives anyone who picks it up the ability to float like Peach and Daisy. To be honest, if I was good, this would probably be much higher because giving any character the ability to float is insane, but sadly, I don't feel like labbing Super Leaf combos. If anyone does though and thinks this is the best item, fair enough. I'm sure you could probably do some really cool things with this. Most people just use it as a basic recovery and stalling tool though, which it works great for, but the float combo potential is really what brings it up so high. 47, Death Scythe. While it spends most of its life, well, I don't think life is the best word. While it spends most of the time being a basic battering item, it eventually gains the ability to instantly KO opponents. The percentage required is different for if it's used as a smash attack or tilt, but it's generally between 70% and 100%. While it is cool for that percent range, it's kind of lame for the rest of the time, so it's just kind of an average item for me. 46, the Timer. This will slow down opponents, leaving them very open for combos and deadly attacks. This can be extremely fun to try and use, and while people can still dodge during it, there's generally enough time to still attack them afterwards. Sadly, in my classic mode speedruns, this item is completely useless, since slowing things down is generally not what you want to do in a speedrun. In normal Smash matches though, this is great, so I have to give it credit there. 45, the Fake Smash Ball, and 44, the Poison Mushroom. Now I know some people are going to heavily disagree with these two, but let me explain. These will both actually hurt the person who uses these, either dealing massive damage or making them tiny. I just think having trap items that look like really powerful items is a cool idea. Yes, these do technically suck to use as they actively hurt you, but I think their addition is a fun one, so I couldn't bring myself to put them lower. They are also both very well implemented, looking similar enough to their main counterpart to possibly trick people not looking closely. 43, the Sticky Bomb. This is basically just Mega Man's side special but turned into an item. Explosions are cool, so I like this. 42, the Bomb Chew. Taken from the Zelda series, this is also an explosive item that goes along surfaces. While it is small, it can be pretty fast, making it definitely a fairly solid attacking item. 41, the Green Shell. This is a pretty standard throwing item, dealing a solid amount of damage if it comes into contact with someone. This does have the additional functionality of being able to be jumped on, which is a neat little reference. No way, mid-air shell jump! 40, Mr. Saturn. This is another one of the few items that can spawn during an actual match. This time he can be rarely pulled from Peach's down special. That's kind of weird considering he's from Earthbound and Peach is from the Mario series, but regardless, this guy is a pretty interesting use, being able to instantly break any shield he touches. In a normal match, this is almost always a guaranteed death, let alone one with items, so it's safe to say this is fairly powerful. Of course, if your opponent knows how to play around it, then the effects can be nullified, but just having a Mr. Saturn can cause people to shield less, making them overall more vulnerable. 39, the Metal Box. This makes anyone who has this equipped heavier and fall faster. Seeing as this comes from one of my favorite Mario games, I like this quite a bit and I think it was well implemented. The metal effect is also cool to see on every character. Steve is especially funny to look at. The fast falling thing can be a bit of a downside, but I do still like it regardless. 38, the Screw Attack. This turns anyone's jump into Samus's up special. Not only that, but you can actually act after the attack as well, which can lead to some pretty interesting combos. It does make certain standard combos slightly more difficult, but overall, I still have a lot of fun messing around with this thing. 37, the Bunny Hood. This comes from Majora's Mask and will boost the speed and jump height of anyone who wears it. This can be pretty powerful, especially in an item match as it lets you more easily reach items that are farther away. It does make short hopping to hit grounded opponents more difficult, but it's definitely an overall upgrade. 36, Bullet Bill. This pretty much works exactly how the item does in Mario Kart, turning the user into the bullets and launching them in any direction they choose. The knockback people hit with this item receive is very powerful, making this item quite deadly. Sadly, the deadliness goes both ways as you can easily kill yourself by overshooting. That does make sniping faraway opponents a bit more exciting though, so this item is still a lot of fun. Alright, time to run through a few battering items. items. 35, the beam sword. This is another item that can appear in standard Smash matches, is what I would say if they didn't remove it. In Melee and Brawl, Peach could pull this with her down special, being her by far rarest pull at only a 1 in 768 chance in Melee and a 1 in 480 chance in Brawl. I'm not sure why they removed it, because this was honestly really fun. But anyway, the beam sword is just a pretty powerful and long-reaching sword. It's also based on the lightsaber from Star Wars, and since I like Star Wars, well, I liked 5 of the main movies, I guess. The others are kind of...
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Well, I like lightsabers, so this is cool. 34, the Ore Club, and 33, the Fire Bar. These are both much stronger battering items, which can easily lead to early kills. The Ore Club is from Kid Icarus and is able to spawn in a tornado. Personally though, I prefer the Mario Fire Bar, which shrinks after a few uses. That's probably just Mario bias speaking though. 32, the Lightning. Coming from the Mario Kart series, this will cause everyone in the match except the one who touched it to shrink. While this use is extremely powerful, it can actually backfire. Rarely it can cause the person who touched it to shrink, or it can even cause everyone else to grow instead of shrinking. Why it can backfire, I don't really know. It's not like it can in the Mario Kart series, so this seems like a weird thing to implement. While that definitely makes the item worse, I still think it's overall worth picking up because the reward is very big if it's successful, which is most of the time. 31, the Steel Diver. Coming from the franchise of the same name, this turns the submarine into a gun, which is already a pretty cute idea. The gun is also very fun to use as well, shooting out mini torpedoes in front of it. They'll move slowly at first before gaining a ton of speed, which is pretty interesting to work with. It's not the most powerful item in the world, but it is still quite fun. Alright, onto our top 30, which I think are really the items that everyone will be scrambling to collect as soon as they spawn on screen. These are all extremely powerful and for the most part, some of the most fun items to use in the game. Starting off, we have 30 the Beetle and 29 the Galaga. These will both grab onto an opponent and drag them up into the top blast zone. Of the two, the Beetle is probably the most powerful, but I like Galaga just a bit more because I think the changing background is a really cute detail. 28 the Special Flag. This is one of the absolute most powerful items in the game, giving the player who used it an entire extra stock. It's not as free as just picking it up though, instead you have to hold the flag over your head for a few seconds until it gives you an extra life. This can create some very intense scenarios where everyone tries to stop someone from using it. I'm not sure if I'd call the item necessarily exciting by itself, which is why it's not at the very top, but it's still certainly good enough to place this high. 27, the Gust Bellow. I'm sure by just uttering this item's name, several character mains have just begun having heart attacks. Shh, Ike, it's okay. This item will create a massive gust of wind in front of it, easily pushing off anything that gets in its way. For some characters, this item can very easily kill them at 0, such as Ike, Chrom, and others with mediocre to even pretty decent recoveries. If this was a power ranking, this item would be near the top of the list, but I just can't really bring myself to move it up higher than this. More than any other item in the game, this one sort of feels like cheating. There's seriously nothing some characters could do against this, so it doesn't really feel great to kill with. I'm sure people will disagree, but to me, this probably is the most overtuned item in the game. 26, the Franklin Badge. This one is nice and simple, just reflecting any projectile that comes in contact with the person wearing it. While this would already be powerful in normal Smash matches, this is made even more powerful in item battles since a majority of items have projectile properties. The only thing holding this back from being higher is the fact that it's not as exciting as the other items higher up, and attentive players can avoid its effects. 25, the Banana Gun. This is one of the funniest item concepts, where you shoot out a deadly banana and cause a pretty high damaging explosion to anyone it contacts. As another small bonus, you even get the banana peel after to trip people. This is certainly one of my favorite items added to Ultimate. 24, the Launch Star. This is probably the least powerful item in the top 30, but it more than makes up for that with how fun it is to use. Just like in Mario Galaxy, this will launch opponents caught in the star in the direction it's facing. This can not only be a pretty powerful KO tool, but it's also a lot of fun to use to extend combos. Mastering this item feels super satisfying. I really like it a lot. I still think Mario Galaxy is the worst 3D Mario, don't get it twisted. 23, the Staff. This is another Kid Icarus item and it will shoot out a horizontal beam across the entire stage, and the farther away the opponent that gets hit is from the user, the more damage and knockback they'll take. Its effectiveness greatly varies based on the stage, as larger stages will make this significantly more powerful. Sniping people from the entire stage length away is always a lot of fun, so it's safe to say I enjoy this item quite a bit. 22, the Lipstick. This is another battering item, but it has the additional effect of adding a flower onto anyone's head who's been hit. This will deal constant damage until the flower eventually falls off. Sure, it's not super complex, but it's a great item regardless. 21, the Pitfall. Just like in the Animal Crossing series, this will allow you to set up a trap anywhere on the stage. If an opponent walks over where you placed a pitfall, they'll be buried into the ground and left open for an attack. What makes this better than some of the other stun items we mentioned before is the fact that once it's placed, it's completely invisible, making it very easy to lose track of. Additionally, this has a special use for anyone it hits in the air, as it will actually act as a spike. This is my personal favorite way to use the item. While it's definitely challenging, it just looks so cool hitting someone out of the air and sending them straight downward. Alright, our next 4 items are different explosives, being 20 the X-Bomb, 19 the Hawktate, 18 the Ba-Bomb, and 17 the Smart Bomb. Each of these all work a bit differently, but the concept remains the same. The X-Bomb is my least favorite of the 4 as it's definitely the weakest, but it more than makes up for that in the sheer range the fire pillars reach. The Hawk Tape produces a massive explosion, though it is after a few seconds, giving people the chance to escape a bit. It does have the additional benefit of carrying people up to the blast zone by itself though, which is always funny. The bomb is pretty much as basic as you'll get for an explosive, which means it's pretty great. Finally, the Smart Bomb is my favorite since it has a big range and lasts for a while, meaning it's very easy to catch people with it or simply knock them into it. All 4 of these items are some of the most chaotic in the game, which I really appreciate. 16. The Daybreak. This is the first of 2 items that require 3 pieces to be collected. I always thought this was a cool gimmick as it makes players even more desperate to pick up the items to stop people from getting them. Of the 2, I definitely think the Daybreak is a bit lamer, just being one massive laser beam, but it's certainly got the power to justify landing high on this list. Oh, and it's also our final Kid Icarus item. I really did not realize how many items came for this franchise. 15. The Blue Shell. This works exactly like it does in the Mario Kart series, flying over the player that's currently in first place and eventually striking them in a massive explosion. This item is really powerful in the context of Smash, because it takes no effort to aim whatsoever and the payoff is enormous. If the player who's in first place uses it, it'll even go for the person in second place instead, meaning there really are no downsides here. Dodging it can be tricky, and if someone decides to just hold shield, that's begging for it to be broken. Yeah, safe to say this item is pretty dang good. 14. The Hothead. This may be a bit controversial, but I really like messing around with these things. They'll stick to and roam across the stage just like bomb chews. The interesting gimmick about this item though is that after being attacked, it'll grow. It can reach a max of about 3 times its original size, making it very difficult to avoid. The bigger it is, the more damage it'll do as well, so trying to power this thing up before throwing it is a lot of fun. It has a nice balance of do I want to throw it now so my opponent doesn't have time to stop me, or do I want to fully charge it up with the risk of my opponent possibly picking it up before I can throw it first. That dynamic is really interesting to me, so I'm a big fan of this item. 13. The Warp Star. Like in the Kirby series, grabbing onto this will send you into the atmosphere at lightning speed. However, after a few seconds, you'll come crashing back down in a massive explosion. What makes this item so interesting is the fact that you can actually control where it lands, but aiming is extremely difficult since you can't actually see yourself. That makes every hit you get with this thing feel way more satisfying, and the power behind its explosions certainly helps. 12. The Dragoon. This is our other collect 3 parts item, and it's very understandable why. Once all 3 parts have been collected, you'll fly off screen and will have to aim a target at one of your opponents. While it can sometimes be difficult, the range of the Dragoon is pretty big. More importantly though, the reward is enormous as it kills at very early percents. The collecting pieces and target part of this item are both so much fun that I had to land pretty high up here. 11. The Bomber. Wow, 3 Kirby items in a row. Funny how that turned out. Remember how I mentioned my classic mode speedruns way earlier in this list? Well, this is just about my favorite item to see appear in any classic mode round. This acts like the special flag from before where you have to hold it over your head to activate. The difference here though is that instead of giving you an extra life, it produces an extremely deadly explosion. Not only will it kill pretty much anything it touches, but it has a massive range as well, making escape very difficult. I like how this opens up another sort of dynamic. Do you run away from the explosion and get to safety, or do you run in and stop the explosion to use the bomb for yourself? I love these little risk-reward scenarios, and I think the Bomber is fantastic at setting those up. 10. The Beast Ball. This has quickly become a fan favorite ever since its introduction in Ultimate. Essentially when you throw it, it'll teleport into a direct hit on your opponent. Not only is this obviously very powerful, this is one of the most fun items to try and combo with in the entire series. I'm not really that good with it myself, but there are a ton of videos using this item in creative ways that it'd be a crime of me to place it outside of the top 10. 9. The Super Scope. This lets you shoot out either quick but small pellets or a massive charge shot that deals a lot of damage. Yeah, this is pretty basic, but it didn't need to be complicated. It provides for a very threatening projectile weapon based on its damage output, so I'm always willing to pick this up. 8. The Hammer, and 7. The Golden Hammer. These 2 are among the most famous items in the Smash Bros. Franchise. These will have whoever picked them up constantly swing them around, and anyone who's hit by it will basically die if they're above 30 or so. The range is pretty big, so it's easy to rack up several kills with either of these 2 when they spawn in. The Golden Hammer even allows the player to hover if they mash the jump button. For some reason. The unique animations each character gets while using these are also fantastic. They're a lot of fun to look at up close. Sadly though, these 2 items can actually backfire, which prevents them from being higher. The normal hammerhead can fall off, giving those without the hammer a very powerful throwing weapon, and the Golden Hammer can just stop working. Had it not been for that, these would have moved up a bit more, but top 10 is certainly not bad. 6. The Home Run Bat. Here's another extremely famous item. This will have anyone who uses it charge up for a big swing, and if they're able to hit anyone, it's a one-hit KO. Yeah, safe to say that's pretty powerful. Sadly though, the charge up can take quite a bit of time, so it can actually be pretty difficult to hit. Not to worry though, as this is one of the most powerful throwing items in the game. Dealing a massive amount of damage to anyone it hits. Additionally, the swing can also reflect projectiles, activating automatically if one comes in front of it. Funnily enough, that means you can basically get an instant swing if you know someone will shoot a projectile in your face, so in that scenario, it can actually be a lot easier to get kills with this than it may seem. 5. The Super Mushroom. You eat it, you get big. Any attack you perform with this will become extremely powerful, meaning it's very easy to get kills with this while it's active. Now you may think this will cause people to just run away like with the superstar, which it certainly will, but with hitboxes this massive, it'd be hard for anyone to escape for long. So yeah, this is easily the best item to come from the Mario franchise. 4. The Pokeball, 3. The Assist Trophy, and 2. The Master Ball. All 3 of these items summon characters or Pokemon from Smash's several different franchises to help you win the fight. These have easily the most depth out of any items in the game, with there being over 114 different characters or Pokemon these can summon. Many of these are extremely powerful too, rivaling even some of the most powerful items we mentioned so far. The excitement of opening up one of these to see what you might get goes completely unrivaled by anything else, which is why I love these 3 so much. But with so many different possible characters, some were bound to be worse than others. Well, luckily I already made a ranking video for all of them, but for those of you who are too lazy to go watch that, here's that video sped up to be like 10 seconds long. I'm sure this isn't controversial to say, but these 3 are easily some of the best items in the series. Okay, this is going to be the most anticlimactic ending for a video ever. Number 1 is the Smash Ball, obviously. Not only is it usually an extremely powerful attack, but it's also personalized to every character, making it feel even more special to use. I also ranked every Final Smash, so here's that video in 10 seconds as well. The way the item itself works is pretty cool too though, requiring people to break it open using attacks. But yeah, sorry if this is a bit of a lame ending, but come on, there's really no other choice for the best item in the Super Smash Bros. Series. But anyways, that's it for this video. Do you think the Healing Sprout is the most interesting and complex item ever added to a video game and hate me for ranking it low? Let me know in the comments. Sorry if this video comes out a bit late, I've been very busy as I've said, but this semester is about to wrap up so I should be good to go here soon. But anyways, dry bones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.